They say you truly know someone when the silence settles, when the routine ends, and the truth has nowhere left to hide. I thought I was living the perfect life, a loving husband, a quiet home, a future that felt steady. But after he died, I unlocked a door he never meant for me to open, and behind it was a life I was never supposed to find. Secrets. A second family. A betrayal deeper than I imagined. What do you do when the person you trusted most leaves you with questions instead of answers? You dig. You fight. And eventually, you walk away. Not broken, but reborn. At ErasedMe, we share stories of women who were pushed aside, written out, or lied to, and what happened when they chose to take the pen back. If you believe in the power of truth, the strength of starting over, and the quiet defiance of those who refuse to disappear, you're in the right place. Subscribe to ErasedMe and join us as we uncover the stories no one expected, but everyone needs to hear. The teacups were still warm. I had set the table like always, white linen napkins, porcelain plates, almond cookies he loved, and his favorite tea steaming in the pot. It was 7 p.m., the exact moment Thomas used to walk through the door, briefcase in hand, tie loosened just so, eyes softening the moment they met mine. But tonight, the door stayed closed. I stood by it for far too long, heart stubbornly waiting for the sound of his key turning in the lock. That quiet click used to mean safety. Ritual. Love. But now, it meant nothing. Now, it was just a sound I'd never hear again. They said it was a heart attack, massive myocardial infarction, the doctor had explained, like using big words would somehow soften the blow. He said it happened fast. I didn't cry. Not then. I nodded like I understood, like I was still a person who lived in a world where my husband was alive. The funeral blurred past me, black dresses, white flowers, unfamiliar faces pretending to know him. I heard people call him generous, brilliant, kind. They spoke as if they knew our life. But how could they? 15 years, I thought I knew him too. The house was quiet now, too quiet. I wandered through it like a stranger, touching framed photos, polished furniture, wedding gifts we never used. Grief wasn't loud, it was silent, like a clock that had stopped ticking and dared me to notice. And I did. Rachel showed up 2 days after the funeral, smelling like gardenias and expensive wine. Her hug lingered just a second too long. I'm so sorry, sis, she murmured, voice smooth as satin. Thomas was like a brother to me. Something in her tone, it didn't land right. Later that evening, while I stared blankly into a teacup gone cold, she poured herself a drink like she owned the kitchen. I know it's a tough time, she said casually, but Thomas loaned me some money. I was hoping to settle that now that everything's yours. I blinked. What money? She smiled, airy and condescending. Oh, he never told you? A stone lodged in my gut. My fingers gripped the counter so tightly they turned white. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the halls like a ghost. The house suddenly felt unfamiliar, like a museum curated for someone else's memories. In the hallway, I noticed the bowl by the door where Thomas always dropped his keys. They were still there. Untouched. I picked them up slowly, running my thumb along each one. Then I saw it, a long silver key, different from the rest. Heavy. Unmarked. The key he never let me use. I'd asked about it once, years ago. He smiled, said, just tools and grease, love. Nothing you'd care about. And I didn't press. I never did. That was our marriage, gentle silences, unanswered questions, and the comfort of not digging too deep. But now, silence wasn't comfort. It was suspicion. I stared at the key in my palm. Tomorrow, I would find out what he never wanted me to see. The next morning, the sky hung low and gray, like even the weather knew something wasn't right. I drove toward the address Thomas had scribbled once on the back of a dry cleaning receipt. He said it was just a side place, nothing important. I'd never been there. The old industrial district greeted me with rusted metal, graffiti-tagged walls, and weeds curling through cracked pavement. The garage stood at the far end, tucked behind a row of decaying warehouses. It looked like the kind of place time forgot. I sat in the car longer than I should have, holding the silver key like it might burn me. The metal door groaned when I unlocked it, the hinges complaining after years of neglect or secrecy. Inside, the air was thick with dust, motor oil, and something else, nostalgia, maybe, or betrayal. I couldn't tell. I flipped the light switch. What I saw didn't make sense. It wasn't a garage. There were no cars, no tool racks, no oil stains. It was a room frozen in obsession. The walls were covered in pinned photographs, hand-drawn maps, highlighted documents, and red strings connecting names and places like a detective's warboard. The kind you only see in movies about spies or madmen. And there, in nearly every photo, Thomas. But not the Thomas the first knew. Not the man in suits and Sunday flowers. This version wore jeans, flannel shirts, a 5 o'clock shadow. He looked alive. Relaxed. Real. And beside him, in nearly every picture, was a woman. Younger. Raven-haired. Her eyes sharp and intelligent. In some photos, they laughed by the ocean. In others, they toasted wine near a fireplace. In one, they held hands. And in another, they stood beside a young man who looked old enough to be in college, same sharp jawline as Thomas. My heart stopped. The caption scribbled on the back read: Isabel and Logan. August 2024. While I was at home, cooking dinner. I don't remember how long I stood there, frozen between the past I thought I knew and the one now pinned across these walls. The garage didn't feel like a room anymore. It felt like a lie made solid. Tangible. I reached for the metal desk in the center, desperate for something to steady me. That's when I saw them: bank statements, letters from overseas firms, documents with Thomas's name tied to accounts I'd never heard of. And then, a medical report, Crescent Heart Institute. Diagnosis: ischemic heart disease. Stage 3. He knew. He knew he was dying. Yet instead of spending his final days with me, he gave them to her, Isabel. And to Logan. A sudden noise snapped me out of the spiral: footsteps. Slow. Careful. I turned quickly, breath caught in my chest. There, standing in the doorway, was the young man from the photographs. He had Thomas's eyes. The same piercing gaze that held both distance and depth. "Vivian Carter?" he asked gently. I didn't answer. "My name is Logan Myers," he said, stepping inside. Thomas Carter was my father. The room seemed to fall away. I gripped the edge of the desk, unsure whether I was going to faint or scream. My mouth opened, but no sound came. He didn't flinch. "I thought you'd come here eventually." I searched his face for answers, for anger, for shame, for anything familiar. But what I saw was worse: calm clarity, like he had been carrying this secret far longer than I had even sensed it existed. "You're really his son," I whispered. "Yes," he said. "And I'm sorry. You weren't supposed to find out like this." I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. The house no longer felt like mine. It belonged to the woman who believed Thomas loved only her. So I went to Claire's. Her arms were steady. Her couch was silent. And the sapphire necklace Thomas gave me 2 nights before he died sat on the table like a cursed gift. Logan called the next morning. His voice was steady, but underneath, there was urgency. "We need to go to his office," he said. "Now." Claire came with us. "You're not walking into a dead man's secrets alone," she insisted. Thomas's office was in a downtown high-rise. He'd always called it a satellite space, somewhere for client meetings. I had never been inside. Logan used a keycard to get us past security. I'm listed as co-owner, he said. Of course he was. The elevator ride felt endless. On the 14th floor, we stepped into a glass-walled suite, cold, modern, impersonal. No family photos, no sign I ever existed. Just polished surfaces and the faint scent of cologne I didn't recognize. Logan pointed to an abstract painting behind the desk. The safe's behind there. I reached for the necklace, fingers trembling as I twisted the sapphire's clasp. A click. Hidden inside was a metal chip etched with a string of numbers. The safe opened with a beep. Inside were files. Contracts. Tax records. A sleek black flash drive. A wooden box. And a small silver key labeled Federal Trust, Safe Deposit. I opened the box first. Inside was a ring. Not mine. A simple gold band, elegant, worn. Engraved on the inside, N, always. N, for Isabel. I felt the room tip sideways. Claire swore under her breath. Logan looked away. He bought her a ring, I whispered. He was going to propose. Or maybe he already did. In that moment, I knew Thomas hadn't just betrayed me. He'd replaced me. Logan handed me a folded letter, my name written on the front in Thomas's familiar, looping script. The same handwriting that once left notes in my lunch bag, or signed birthday cards with little hearts. But this wasn't a love note. This was a reckoning. I sat down, the room too quiet, my heartbeat too loud. I opened it. Vivian. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry. Not just for leaving, but for never having the courage to speak the truth while I still had the time to do it face to face. I paused, the words burning. I built 2 lives. I told myself I was protecting you by keeping them separate. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of losing everything. Afraid of hurting you. I loved you, Vivian. That wasn't a lie. But I loved her too. And I didn't know how to choose, so I didn't. I tried to balance both worlds until the weight of it collapsed on top of me. My hands shook. What I've left behind are files, codes, the necklace, it's all real. Use them however you choose. Burn them. Hide them. Expose everything. I've earned whatever comes. You don't owe me forgiveness, but if you find it in you, even a sliver of it, know that I died hoping you'd be free of all this. Thomas. By the time I reached the last word, the page blurred through my tears. Not because I forgave him. But because part of me still wished I didn't have to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on Claire's pull-out couch, the sapphire necklace resting on the table like a ticking bomb. The flash drive stayed in Logan's pocket. None of us had the nerve to open it yet. We weren't ready for more truth. At 2:11 a.m., my phone rang. Vivian Carter, the voice asked, low, calm, precise. Yes, I said, already cold with dread. This is Gordon Blake. I was a business associate of your husband's. I sat up straight. I don't know who you are. But I believe you have something that belongs to me. My spine stiffened. You're mistaken. No, I'm not, he said, voice like ice on glass. The documents. The offshore accounts. The evidence Thomas was supposed to destroy. I suggest we meet. I'm not meeting anyone, I said, louder than I meant to. You will, he replied smoothly. Because the other people involved aren't as polite as I am. They don't ask. He hung up before I could speak. I stared at the phone until the screen went dark, my breath caught somewhere between fear and fury. Minutes later, Logan appeared in the hallway, already dressed. He called me too, he said. But it gets worse. He handed me a note, scribbled hastily on the back of a receipt. Victor Crane, the man Thomas once trusted most. He had called Logan with a deadline. If we didn't return the assets by the end of the week, there would be consequences. And we both knew these men didn't bluff. We needed answers. Not guesses. Not threats. Truth. And Logan had one last name, buried in a memory his mother once whispered, Edward Holloway. He was Dad's oldest friend, Logan said. Mom said he was the only one who ever told Thomas the truth, even when it hurt. We drove to Savannah through steady rain, windshield wipers keeping time with the tension building between us. The silence wasn't cold, it was shared, purposeful. Two people preparing for whatever lay ahead. Edward lived in an ivy-covered brick house, the kind that looked like it should smell of pipe smoke and first editions, and it did. When he opened the door, he didn't seem surprised. "You're Vivian," he said softly. "And you must be Logan." He stepped aside. "Thomas told me if everything unraveled, you'd both come." Inside, he led us to a heavy oak table and handed me a sealed envelope. "I was instructed to open this only if both of you stood here together." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a short handwritten letter from Thomas, and a second will. I scanned the pages, heart stuttering when I read the line. 25% of my private offshore assets to the unborn child of Rachel Carter, held in trust until age 21. I looked at Logan. His face tightened. "He planned for the baby," I whispered. "Not for Rachel." Edward nodded. He didn't trust her. But he knew the child might need protection. The weight of it settled like dust. Thomas hadn't just cheated. He had calculated everything. He built a storm, then handed us the map to survive it. I didn't feel like a widow anymore. I felt like the last witness in a case no one had the guts to prosecute. And if they thought I'd crumble under pressure, they had clearly underestimated what grief and betrayal could turn a woman into. We didn't go home. We went to a lawyer. His name was Marcus Doyle, a man who once handled my father's estate and was known more for his discretion than his warmth. When we laid the files, the key, the flash drive, and the second will on his desk, he didn't flinch. He simply asked, "Do you want justice or leverage?" "Leverage," I said without hesitation. "I'm not looking to be a martyr. I'm looking to stay alive." He nodded and got to work. We scanned everything, twice. Uploaded files to secure cloud storage. Printed copies. Burned backups to encrypted drives. One copy would stay with him. One with Claire. One I would hide in a place no one could find. Marcus drafted a letter, a polite warning to Gordon Blake. At the bottom, I added my own line by hand. "Try me. VC." We sent it by courier. Gordon called within 15 minutes. "You think you're clever," he hissed. "No," I said calmly. "I think I'm done being afraid." He laughed. "What do you want?" "Nothing," I said. "Except silence. One more call, one more threat, and everything goes public. Every name, every transfer." There was a pause. Then the line went dead. But I knew it wasn't over. Only, this time, I wasn't the one waiting to be hunted. It took me 2 days to open the flash drive. 2 days of walking past it like it might hiss or explode. 2 days of convincing myself I was ready when I wasn't. But some truths don't wait. They crawl into your dreams, rattle the doorknobs of your mind, and whisper, "Look." Claire brought tea. Logan sat beside me, silent but present. I plugged it in. One folder, for Vivian. One file, a video, time-stamped 10 days before Thomas died. I clicked play. He appeared on the screen, disheveled, pale, eyes darker than I remembered. He looked tired. Worn down by something deeper than illness. "Vivian," he began, "if you're seeing this, it means I ran out of time." He paused, swallowed hard. "I didn't hide things from you because I didn't love you. I did it because I was weak, and because I thought protecting you meant keeping you in the dark. Then his tone shifted. There's someone you need to be careful with. Someone you trust too easily. It's Rachel. The name hit like ice water down my spine. It wasn't just an affair, he continued. It was control. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. The day I told her I couldn't continue, she changed. His voice cracked. I think she killed Isabel. I froze. He went on, Isabel had booked a one-way ticket to Lisbon. She'd packed her bags. She was ready to leave him and the lies behind. But she never made it. A car crash. No witnesses. Brakes failed. The same day Rachel found out she was pregnant. I can't prove it, Thomas said. But I know. I know what she's capable of. He leaned forward, his voice trembling. You're stronger than I ever was, Vivian. Whatever you do, don't face her alone. The screen went black. And my world shattered for the second time. I invited her to brunch. Rachel showed up in a soft blue dress that hugged her growing belly. She smiled like nothing had ever happened, like we were sisters again, like the world hadn't cracked open between us. He kicks when I drink orange juice, she said with a laugh, gently cradling her stomach. I smiled, too, but only with my mouth. We sat on Claire's porch. Logan stayed inside, watching from the window, his jaw tight. Claire had made sweet tea, but neither of us touched it. I'm glad you reached out, Rachel said, folding her hands neatly in her lap. I was worried you were angry. Why would I be angry? I asked softly. Because my husband was sleeping with my sister? Or because he left part of his estate to the child you're carrying? Her smile twitched. The first crack. Vivian, this isn't easy for me either, she said. Thomas was complicated. But he loved you. No, I said. He pitied me. But he feared you. Her eyes darkened. I reached into my bag and pulled out the flash drive, placing it gently on the table between us. Her gaze dropped, lips parting just slightly. I know everything, I said calmly. The money. The pressure. Isabel. He told me. In his own words. Rachel didn't blink. You can't prove anything. You're right, I replied. I don't have to. I stood slowly. I'm not going to court. I'm not pressing charges. I'm not wasting my life chasing a justice system built for men like Thomas and women like you. She stood too, defensively. You think that scares me? No, I said. But it should. I walked back into the house where Logan waited. I didn't need revenge. I just needed her to know she'd lost the upper hand. That afternoon, I met Marcus Doyle at his office one last time. I handed him the flash drive, a signed affidavit, and a short note with 6 words written in my handwriting. If anything happens to me, release everything. He nodded once, understanding without needing to ask. Claire stood beside me, quiet as ever, the kind of presence that needed no words. Then I went home. For the first time in weeks, I stepped into the house I had once shared with Thomas, not as a wife, not as a widow, but as someone peeling away the last remnants of a life built on performance. I moved slowly through each room. The polished wood floors no longer shone the same way. The wedding photo on the mantel looked staged. Even the scent of the house felt artificial, like a memory too rehearsed to be real. I opened the closet and packed a single suitcase. Only what mattered. No heirlooms. No framed lies. No sapphire necklace. When I reached the garage, I locked the door, not to keep anyone out, but to tell myself I wouldn't return. That night, I slept at Claire's again. The flash drive was gone. The secrets were out of my hands. For once, I felt light, not healed, but unburdened. Tomorrow, I would leave the city. Not as the woman Thomas left behind, but as the woman who finally walked away. 1 week later, I boarded a flight to Colorado. No send-off, no tears, no note left on the kitchen counter. Just a new name on a lease, one suitcase in hand, and a one-way ticket to air that smelled like pine and possibility. The cottage was small, perched near a ridge where the wind sang through the trees like it knew every secret I'd carried. The walls were bare, but honest. The silence wasn't heavy, it was healing. I didn't bring photos. No framed memories of a man who wore masks. No wedding china we never used. No sapphire necklace to remind me of what I lost or what I survived. I brought books. A plant. A mug that read "Choose Peace." And I brought myself. Not the woman who baked almond cookies at 7 and waited for a husband who never really came home. Not the grieving widow in black silk. Not the sister betrayed, or the pawn caught between men and money and secrets. Just me. Vivian Carter. I sit on the porch most evenings, wrapped in a wool blanket, watching the mountains settle into twilight. Some nights, I still hear Thomas's voice. But it doesn't haunt me anymore. It reminds me of everything I've unlearned. Betrayal didn't break me. It revealed me. I wasn't the woman he chose to lie to. I was the woman who chose to leave. And this quiet, wide, unapologetic space is mine now. All of it. In a world where silence is often mistaken for peace, Vivian Carter's story reminds us that the deepest betrayals rarely come with warning signs. They arrive dressed as routine, comfort, and love. For 15 years, she built her life on trust, the trust of a wife who never questioned, a sister who forgave too easily, and a woman who believed in the kind of loyalty that stays quiet, even when it aches. But when the layers of deception fell away, what emerged wasn't weakness, it was the strength to see things clearly, to face not only the truth of others but the truth of herself. Vivian didn't seek revenge. She didn't need courtrooms or confessions. She needed clarity. And in choosing to walk away, not in bitterness but in dignity, she reclaimed something more powerful than any inheritance, her agency. This story is a testament to the quiet kind of courage. The bravery it takes to hold your ground when everything familiar has collapsed, to say enough when others expect silence, and to rewrite your story when you were never supposed to hold the pen. Loyalty without truth is just blindness. Courage without action is just noise. But when truth, loyalty, and courage meet, there you find freedom. Vivian Carter didn't just survive betrayal, she transformed it into strength. She reminds us that we are not defined by the people who break us, but by the choices we make once we know the truth. And perhaps, in the end, the most powerful act of love isn't staying, it's leaving, with your head high, and your soul intact. Because healing begins not when the lies end, but when we stop living by them.